According to Matador, the 90s are like in now, and the kids want to know about the 90s.
That's like,
I can't believe that's true really any more than...
well, I think they want little kids to be making it, though, the 90s music.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah.
They have like this guy, Car Seat Headrest, and he's into the 90s, and Kurt, violin. Kurt likes our bands, and
Yeah.
What's up? This is Elia Einhorn. Welcome to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Here at the Talkhouse, we pair notable musicians for thoughtful, unmoderated conversations and release new talks each week. Regular listeners will have caught recent episodes like The Replacement's Tommy Stinson with the MC5's Wayne Kramer, or the Flaming Lips' Wayne Coyne in conversation with legendary hip-hop producer Prince Paul. Check out these and all of our past episodes and subscribe to get new ones on Stitcher or iTunes. Today's guests are two indie rock veterans, Stephen Malkmus of Pavement, and of course Stephen Malkmus and the Jicks, and Emil Amos, drummer for Om and Grails, and the main man of Holy Sons, who dropped their newest LP, In the Garden, last year. During the conversation, Amos draws out Malkmus' story, from his early music fandom in Stockton, California, to college in Virginia, to the ups and downs of being a 90s indie guitar god in Pavement and beyond. And their chat takes in a lot more, too. Venturing out of their DIY comfort zones to work with big-name producers, Elliott Smith's love of fine recording gear, and his studio size miscalculation, Silverjew's David Berman being obsessed with The Cure long before he took up weirdo country music, and artists they love and artists they don't much care for, including their thoughts on Operation Ivy, Dinosaur Jr., The Meat Puppets, Graham Parsons, B.B. King, Kurt Vile, and loads more. Check it out.
Drop off the shiny robe. I've got a lot of things I want to sell, but not here, baby.
So you were saying the other night something about how when Minor Threat came out, you were out on the West Coast, and it just didn't quite get over there for a while.
Not to our town, like in 82 and up to 84. I mean, there might have been people with better tastes, but we were kind of jokey in our punk. It was just, if it was fast and aggressive and a little sarcastic. Like, I guess the Dead Kennedys were the kind of the first band that you could really like them when you were in 6th or 7th grade because they were so jokey and kind of
but
offensive.
Always smart and politically seemingly right.
Yeah, and good players with like well-produced albums and stuff. So it started with them, and then Flipper was a band that was like the opposite in some ways, but also in many ways alike in that they were ironic and rude. And so those are my favorite regional bands. And this band called Tales of Terror Live was a band from Sacramento that I was in a punk band called Straw Dogs, and we had our first shows in Sacramento, and we had the open for, we were like first and then Tales of Terror, and we wanted to be better than Tales of Terror. Like in our minds, we were like more pure, like there was something less showmanship about us. But this band, Tales of Terror, I mean, they were doing like backflips off the stage, and there was a little like Guns N' Roses in them or something, or what you imagine if Guns N' Roses jumped around a lot. They looked a little voodoo-y and stuff, but they were just like miles ahead in their performance. And
you still lived in Stockton.
Yeah, that was when that band was going on. But so those three, and then the West Coast, the Circle Jerks played in town. Black Flag came through. But in Sacramento, all the bands came. I mean, I saw GBH, Buttle Surfers, Discharge, the Toxic Reasons, and MDC, and Good and Bad. You know, I saw it all.
In your mind, were you like thinking you'd probably migrate to San Francisco and go into punk music as a kid?
No, I think I knew I was going to go to college. I was going to leave. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a poser, but I was growing out of, I wasn't going to be punk for life, because also in our town, there was drugs and the heroin, and there was an older generation of punk guys, this band called The Authorities, which their singles on like Killed by Death, it's well regarded, and it's a great single. But they were like 21 when we were 16, and they liked bands like The Damned and unfortunately Johnny Thunders. But so these older guys all got into shooting dope, and then some of the younger people in our scene followed them. And so they either never left Stockton, or a couple of the older guys OD'd. None of my friends did, luckily. But, you know, you can't really recover from that unscarred. So I was kind of always like, I got to get out of here. This is not going anywhere. And the San Francisco punk scene was dark, and there was the East Bay with like Green Day and Operation Ivy. That's a different story, but I also didn't like that music, so that made it hard, you know, because I liked Crime and Code of Honor more and Flipper than those like bands with good values.
So when you went off to college, then were you recording the early stuff on like summer breaks?
Yeah, pretty much. Christmas, summer breaks. It was after college. I skipped college making music. I was just a fan, and that's when I heard more about, I knew about like Sonic Youth in high school, and not, you know, Mudhoney hadn't happened yet, or maybe Big Black. I knew about that, but it wasn't my thing. I was into punk, and then like more like Violent Femmes and Echo and the Bunnymen and like REM or something. And a little bit of, well, Van Halen and Rush and leftover things from atavistic leftovers from youth, Devo. So yeah, that's when, for those 4 years were when Pavement could have happened, because that's when, you know, we started learning about indie and Can and Faust and Wire. Like Wire was a huge band there. Everyone loved Wire, and I, you know, I never heard of fucking Wire in Stockton. Just didn't know about that. Sex Pistols, yes, but not Wire.
So you hit college in Virginia, right? And you're a West Coast kid. Did you feel displaced at all on the East Coast?
Not so much, because that place it was in Charlottesville. It's like a bubble of, there's some kind of fraternity Southern boys that I didn't relate to, but they just go about their business. They don't really hassle you if you're not either a hot girl or they just leave you alone, you know. They're doing their rituals and going to football games. And there's outsiders. There's like northern people coming there. My friend David from Texas.
But you did 4 whole years. Did Dave Berman and Bob do that too?
Yeah, they're a year younger than me. And there was a good music scene there, it turns out. Not only did all the bands come through town, the SST bands and the Replacements, any kind of college rock would come. There was also probably in your town too. I'm not even talking about like all the cultural music that happened too. There was like Sun Ra played, Cecil Taylor, Art Ensemble of Chicago. I mean, a lot of things came there that were eye-opening and influenced me, you know, that was weirder stuff.
You're talking about to Virginia.
Yeah, to Charlottesville. Because there was they were more like sponsored gigs of the school, but there was a good jazz scene there for that. And some blues, a lot of blues artists. John Lee Hooker always coming there. And Hound Dog Taylor. And I saw a lot of blues shows that were really fun and good. And B.B. King even played in the in like this big outdoor thing for like the frat kids. That wasn't so great, but he's such a nice guy. He's a showman, he just played his hits for them.
You remind me a little bit of him.
Yeah, I know. Nice guy.
So once you're in Virginia, I'm guessing you like retroactively learned about all the Discord history because they would come through.
I knew about that, and Richmond has a weird. Well, they had Guar, and Richmond was much more arty. It always has been. But DC, I was still a little too late to be a Minor Threat fan or a Void, I could appreciate it. Fugazi, I did like them, but I've seen them a couple times, but I didn't, I didn't not like them or anything, but I'm sorry to say this, it just kind of happened. Like when I was into the Royal Trucks or something, that Fugazi was happening.
They were almost like, I felt like they distributed a lot of information by bringing cool bands with them. So they kind of
That's true.
Shudder to Think and all those weird bands you wouldn't have known about them.
I like them.
Yeah, they were really good.
We toured with Pavement tour with them.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we
by
toured
like
with them.
Get Your Goat or
No,
later
on the major label album.
Yeah,
like Roll Down the Road to. That was a great single, I thought. They were on Epic, and they were also on Big Cat, our label in England. And so we did like a full tour with those guys.
Did old David Berman, he came out from Texas, so does that mean, did he bring like country music history to your...
No, he likes The Cure. That's his foundations. He's a Cure.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, no, he's a Cure boy at heart. He was like a half goth, sort of, before he got to Virginia. I don't know how he got into the country. I don't know. I don't really like country as much as a lot of people. I do like electric country, like the Meat Puppets or the idea of the Eagles, but not actually the Eagles. And I can kind of play those songs. Well, I don't know why, but I can. People seem to like my semi-country songs that are not really country. They're like country rock, I guess.
Like Range Life or something.
Yeah. And I have more, and I have new ones. And they actually sound whatever reason. There's a little like Sterling Morrison in my guitar solos. They're not like country. So I guess they're also like Velvet Underground, fourth style country. So I can do that. But I don't know. He was like he's kind of the Cure, Buttle Surfers. And because that was a big band for us in college, pretty much based on their live show. And they were so much bigger than the other indie bands.
Yeah.
In the trail they blazed, they were like an alpha style band. But when David moved after school, he moved to Nashville, and I think he just wanted to earn some money. He thought he could just write some country songs and people would like it. And he met, that city's like a music industry city. If you go to the right bar, people are involved in it. Yeah, I don't remember him saying you got to hear this like Freddie Fender or see, I don't even really know country. I like Hank Williams or something. That's enough for me. For country, yeah. What about you? Do you like country a lot, or at least some?
Well, it's somehow in our bloodstream, or it's buried in our DNA. Well, you know what a record's supposed to sound like, so your hands and your brain kind of conform. Like, here comes a drum fill, here comes a guitar lick, and you just know what it's supposed to sound like because of some car ride you took when you were 6, and your dad was playing this cassette over and over. You just fill in the blanks,
Did your family like country?
I grew up in
You're from
North Carolina.
Carolina.
Yeah, so we were like a hippie family transplanted from Miami, and I just had a single mom. She was like in the workforce. She getting her perm, hitting the 80s, just cruising, getting a good
Moving
job.
forward.
Yeah, 9 to 5. She listened to that all the time, you know.
Yeah.
And Eagles 8-track. You know, she had like 4 records. Billy Joel Glass
same
Houses.
here.
And so you just absorb it. But then eventually they started having the Black Mountain Festival. Was a big get together kind of thing, and that was like very like
That's like
bluegrass stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Merle Fest, I went to that, which was Doc Watson's festival. So I saw like Ralph Stanley and a 10 people and like Tony Rice, like the flat picking masters. You still didn't like it. You were just dragged along, you know, I mean, as a little kid. But then you wake up years later and you're like, oh, this is kind of in my bloodstream. I can't help it. Maybe when you sing, you hear the southern part of your life or something. One time I was asked to write an essay. It was called like, it wasn't called Respect Your Elders, but it was called like Show Some Respect or something. They were like, just write something about somebody who you want to pay respects to in the classic past. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do David Gates. So I wrote this thing on Bread, which, you know, is like
was trailblazing in many ways because Bread is about as cool as it's ever been in the last half decade or 10 years.
Oh, dude, but people hated it. So it was like, at the time, it just seemed like a really good contrarian thing to throw in people's face or something. But so I wrote this long essay about Bread, and I think I maybe mentioned Crooked Rain, and or maybe halfway through the article, I'm like, it occurred to me that maybe there was somewhat of a conscious turning back to our parents' music.
Yeah, on that album for sure.
But that was conscious, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. It was supposed to be kind of classic rock, but debased, like bad things like the Eagles, and because our first album was so fall and it was very scratchy and stuff. You know, it's just like, I also like this. Or anything's game. You can take anything and make it good if you approach it the right way, I guess, and stuff. So, and I wanted to do something more song-based, so. But there's like a Can influence song on there. There's like a Dave Brubeck song. There's like some Neil Youngy guitar at the end, but it was more 70s in general, that record was. And it was, the initial guitar solos are a little like All Right Now by Free, or the first song, Silence Kid. It sounded more like that before Bryce mixed it, but he like mixed the guitars totally different than I had planned, but then I liked it. He made it sound more sloppy. So that was a template for the thing. It's like, you can like this too. It's cool, you know, or Dinosaur had that. Dinosaur is such a big band for that You're Living All Over Me. It was such a like revelation album in like many levels. Like sonically, I don't know how they did it at Wharton Tears, but somehow it sounds murky but like perfect, and the drums are quiet but they're loud, and it just, for some reason, that one's lo-fi perfect. And the sound of that, that melancholy and the classic rock and the shredding guitar, and it's still punk. So I hear that album is like influential and sonically too, you know, not just on like bands like that took, we're gonna make like loud, distorted pop songs.
You know, like Graham Parsons had that declaration of like, I'm gonna make cosmic American music, which he never really did.
Yeah, right.
But Jay Mascis like said, I'm gonna make whatever it's called, like ear bleeding country. Yeah. That is kind of I mean, Meat Puppets obviously kicked it off, but like it was kind of a left turn, you know, it's like a bizarre, and you're totally right that you can hear this birdsy thing kind of like chiming with the double vocals, and it's kind of like soothing.
It was like perfect 19-year-old, like 20-year-old music too, for, you know, you're through your adolescence, but you're still like a little frustrated, and I mean, his music is a little more like, I'm not getting laid, but like you can you're getting laid by then, but like it's not easy still or something. And so you can relate to that album. I don't know. That was a massive record for guitar music for me.
I feel like it like lit Chapel Hill on fire. Or like all the small towns, like it just sort of created like a type of guy with the kind of like with the clothing and the hair length and the way that everybody thought. It was like it was a galvanizing lightning bolt or something. And what is it? Our band Could Be Your Life like says that it was like marketed to radio, like a major label record or something. Like I think it
SST tried to do that.
Yeah, with
You're Living All Over Me.
Like it kind of created a wave. It was like it was a strangely ambitious marketing campaign or something.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, I just know it was like all the dudes, like a wide variety of dudes liked it at my college radio, and girls probably too, but I don't know. I didn't know what they liked really back then. I didn't listen to music with them.
Yeah.
I think they probably liked Dinosaur.
Bites his child in innocent ways, along with the birds playing games of words. Resting in the tall grass in the sweet Saxon sun.
Do you record Holy Sons yourself?
I started as like a lo-fi militant kid that was like using Walkmans and stuff. Did you ever record on Walkmans?
Yeah, I've done that. You can do. You can also then replay your thing and double record. I've done that before. You know, on a boombox or something.
Yeah,
You could do primitive 2-track recording.
totally. I mean, everybody does that first, and then I just put out this record that was produced by John and Yellow. He's a really good engineer. So
Yeah,
you know about
his stuff
him?
it sounds like classic Rocky sounding.
Yeah.
Kurt Weill and Dinosaur.
Right.
And like he's done Sonic Youth. That's mainly what I know he does, but he does tons of other stuff.
Yeah. His brother invented the Eventide harmonizer in the 70s that Bowie and Eno used.
Yeah.
So they have this weird streak of Brooklyn brilliance to them. They're really, really smart guys.
Yeah.
As an engineer, he's just, I don't think he's ever used a plugin. So he's like he shows up with a huge Tupperware
Outboard
container of
things.
LA2A Teletronics things, and he's a master at compression. Like you can't hear his compression, but you feel it. It's like he's an old school master. I feel like we're old enough now to see things from like the Willie Nelson perspective of weathering decades. So there's kind of like this sense of like you're going to go up some years, you're going to go down, you're going to go back up, and you're going to go back down, and then eventually you're just like, what the fuck is the difference? You know what I mean?
You're going to stay down everywhere except New York and LA and Chicago probably. You know, that's just the way it goes. San Francisco.
But there's like a grace to accepting that reality,
Yeah.
you know?
If you always kind of jammed Econo, then you never were that high. So I think, at least for me, I mean, I was only in a tour bus like once or twice at the end of Pavement in America. In Europe, I was much more often in a tour bus, not a very nice one, but you probably were too because they're not as expensive and it's just a way to get around fast that you can't do if you're driving yourself. And you sleep in the bus and you save money that way.
When you were moving from like, I guess like Crooked Rain towards Bright in the Corners, so you were sort of having to maybe accept that this system we're talking about, like of like using a big time producer, and did you go into that like totally willingly, or was that something you were a little trepidatious about?
Well, we just kind of stuck with the same people that we made the first one, which was Slanted Enchanted, by ourselves and like in a basement studio and with no advice. So it sounds like rough. And then the second, The Crooked Rain, I did mostly in a rehearsal room in Midtown. And then we did go to this place called Baby Monster, which was on 14th Street. And Matt Sweeney had said, like, there's this place, Baby Monster, and it was $50 an hour, and you could mix there. So we were just planning on mixing it ourselves. And it had a Neve board and these things we'd heard about that were really cool. Going to make it sound better. And when we got there, there was an engineer there. His name's Bryce Goggin, and he worked with Chavez and like Elliott Sharp, and he kind of just took over because like there was all these things we didn't know what to do with, compressors and reverb, and we had recorded it ourselves just direct into the tape machine. And then he took over and started just mixing it kind of without even asking. I mean, we were like writing the faders a little bit and saying like that's supposed to be, I give him a setup of what the song was beyond the rough tape. And then he was so good, he made it sound like a real band, like big and fat bass, and like he re-recorded the drums like he would because there was no bottom snare like recorded for whatever reason because we didn't know how to do it. And so he just ran the snare sound back into the studio and recorded a snare just sitting there, you know, and so when the snare would hit, the bottom snare would record. He did all this kind of stuff, and he was very quick and like macho about it. And I think like he had like a 90% success rate or 75. We had to do a couple over, and we scrapped a couple songs. But so then that was, you know, basically like having a producer because he was a mixer and we just didn't know it before we got there. And then we used him on the Wowie Zowie to mix it, not record it, and then also the one you mentioned, Bright in the Corner. So up to that point, we didn't really have he did this band called Space Hog, which had a hit called In the Meantime. I don't know if you remember them.
Barely.
One of them was married to Steven Tyler's beautiful daughter, Liv Tyler. They were like two English guys from Leeds. And so he was getting a name, and then he moved on to work with Fish almost exclusively.
Wow.
During the drug era too, and during all eras. Then we used Nigel. So the time I only used a producer, only time we used one was with Nigel Godrich, who all engineers and studio people kind of rightfully are in awe of, because he's pretty much the alpha of like new generation producers. And he was interested in Pavement. They liked Wowie Zowie. He and like Radiohead were fans. And he's like, I have time off and I'd like to do it. And then I was like, well, this guy, he also did Beck, like Mutations, which he was really proud of. He played me some of that and he was totally psyched. He had just done that. And so that's when we used one. And I didn't know what that was going to entail. But he was cool. You know, he was like, I just want my percentage points. You don't even have to pay me a fee. I'm free and I'm already made a lot of money and I want to work with you guys. So we'll just carry this to the end. And, you know, we paid for the studio time, of course, which started to get expensive because he had his own standards. Because we started at the Sonic Youth studio. When we got there, like they also had a nice Neve board, but like the faders were upside down. They went down, and we recorded like 3 days, and Nigel was losing his mind trying to figure this out, and he wasn't getting he couldn't get the Nigel sound, so he's like, we have to stop. And there was like headphone mixes were dubious at best. And there were a lot of reasons why we left. But then we went to this place near the new NYU park. It's not Tompkins Square, right? It's the other one. It's
Washington Square?
Yeah, I was there. It was where the Beastie Boys recorded Intergalactic and stuff. This is just what I remember. Like I wasn't why I wanted to go there. Yeah. And it was on like the 14th floor of this really nice apartment building. And it was a small room because it's New York, but it was like really fancy. I just don't remember what it's called, but it was super nice. He's like, we're going to do it here. So then, a few $1,000s later, we had like 7/10 of the album. And then we still had to do overdubs. I'm going off on a tangent. So then we went to England, where he lives, and we went to Rack, where he started. Rack's a great historical studio where Mickey Most owned it, and he was a hit maker with Hot Chocolate, and he also knew the Yardbirds and Jimmy Page. I mean, he wore leather pants still. And had a fancy car, but would only get like Marks and Spencer sandwiches. Like he had weird, cheap and rich at the same time. And his daughter worked the front desk, and she was pretty. And he would just sit in the lobby and just be like, "How you doing, boys? Are you winning?" He would just. And there was 3 studios there. We were in the cheaper one. And we finished the songs. We had to get a new drummer for a couple songs.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we had to get... Steve West couldn't play these songs in time that were like needed to be in time. So we got the High Llamas drummer. And I drummed on one song too, but that wasn't the one that needed to be in time. That needed to be out of time in the right way. And so it was a long... That was like a real like classic rock, overproduced,
right,
$100,000 record or whatever.
Which
Terror Twilight
kind of seems to cancel out some of the need for a producer, because at that point, you're just anyone paying that much money and putting that much effort into something could make.
You should be able to make something good, you know. But you could make some deep, like we made some things that weren't as good as they could have been, or choices of songs. And then that was funny too, because there was a big argument with the order of the songs on it. No one really cares about this album that much, but like at the time, he wanted it, and I didn't really mind, but he had a certain order that was with a difficult song first, a little like Radiohead's OK Computer. It was like a longer, challenging song that would set the tempo. And like Scott in our band and the other ones, they didn't, not only did they not like that song, they barely played on it, and like wanted this other like easier song first, like the hit song or whatever. And so Nigel was just like, I'm done with this, you know, like this is bullshit and this is the wrong move. We made a stoner album and now it's like you're going halfway, which he's right probably. But it didn't take away from the fact that the song he wanted first was like not as good as it should have been either, though, in my mind.
You had a couple singles on that. I mean,
yeah, there was Spit on a Stranger, and there was some, I mean, it came out all right, but that's a long way of answering your producer story.
For some reason, I think of that as like a Portland, Oregon record, because I had just maybe moved here.
Yeah, we rehearsed here for a second at Larry's old studio. We tried to
the old Jackpot.
Yeah, we started rehearsing there, and it just didn't sound that good. He was taping it too, and so there was maybe a mine that we could record there, but it didn't have a nice sound.
I think of that old studio as like a sort of a lo-fi studio that him and Elliott Smith set up or something.
But he had, again, like a fancy board. Elliott Smith bought like this huge, I remember the day it came, I think it was like a Quad 8 or had a name like that, but they're like, it's coming today. We need help moving it into the studio. You know, we need some manpower.
It's like 97? Or?
Yeah, and it came, and it was like, came in a truck. It was like weighed 2 tons, and it was too big for their room. Like they just didn't do their due diligence. It wouldn't fit even through the door. You know, they could put it in the studio, but not in the console room.
So Elliott Smith was always like a gearhead, essentially. He was excited to step up into that world.
I think so. I think he was probably like a lot of people. He had a bunch of money and he didn't know what to spend it on. So, you know, if he was smart, he bought like Martin guitars and U87s. And when he wasn't smart, he was buying other stuff, you know, that he shouldn't have been buying. But, you know, I think he was just like, I want to get George Martin's compressor or whatever, and a Fairchild compressor and a U87 and great stuff, which I think that's a good way to spend your money. I mean, at least it's always going to be there. Even if you don't know how to use it, the obvious thing that if you don't know how to use good stuff, it's not going to matter. But that's why I never buy good stuff.
So when did you first move to New York? Is that after college?
1990, I moved there. I graduated in 88. And yeah, I lived in Jersey City though at first because Bob Nastanovich from Richmond, Virginia was the first of our like kind to move up there. And he was braver and willing to work any job. So he worked at like UPS in the shipping. He eventually drove a bus. He wasn't, because it's hard to get a job in New York even then. I mean, I guess it's not that hard, but it seemed hard. It's not hard to get any job. But
where was Mark from?
Mark's from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He was already there. He moved in the 80s, and he was in the Dust Devils. Do you remember them?
Barely.
They were like the kings of the scene.
Seriously?
Yeah, they're two leaders, Michael and Jackie. She was from Australia and he's from England. And they were always at Max Fish, and they loved the fall and they loved Unrest. And they were a band of fans. They weren't uptight, like, we're so cool, we're in a band, you know. They were in the front when Jesus Lizard came every time, or they were... When Laughing Hyenas played, they were in the front row, just like being fans. They were the first people that were nice to us when Pavement started. They said they liked Pavement, whereas there was more of a scum rock contingent, which people turned out to be nice, but they didn't seem like they were. If it was like Cop Shoot Cop or The Unsane. And
did you at the time, were you like, we're up against this... context where like we're not going to be like the tough guys or whatever? But we were, you know, we were more like Hoboken types, I guess, because we also lived in Hoboken. You know, we weren't like Richard Kern styled. No, I like him and stuff, but like you weren't like the Swans is what you were thinking
not
of.
The Swans and Live Skull and this like New York noise thing. But it turned out that there was a thing happening that we were a part of that we didn't really know, which was like Sebado starting and Love Child and like there was just, you know, there were more nerds out there than we knew.
Yeah.
And then I guess like Superchunk and Teenage Fan Club, they were unmatted. I mean, they were softer and like nice people first. But,
so you're saying like the Westing stuff or whatever, I guess like Slay tracks or something?
Yeah.
So that stuff you had made on a 4-track, right?
No, that was in Gary's place too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that was more a Drag City era thing. So that they heard our single. They were just getting started. These guys, Dan and Dan, Dan's not so busy with the company anymore. And they said, we're starting this label. And we got the Royal Trucks. They're going to be our first thing. And we had heard that first Royal Trucks album, which is amazing and really weird. And Royal Trucks were part of New York scene a little bit because Neil was in Pussy Galore. And Pussy Galore was
that wasn't like DC or something? Or
he was originally, but they moved to New York. And so Pussy Galore was kind of like a king of the scene band, like deconstructed scum rock band also. But Royal Trucks were so weird, and so we said, like, yeah, I mean, you've got a good start. We like the Royal Trucks. You guys are cool. They kind of knew touch and go people, and they were just had a Chicago honesty thing going on.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna pay, and we're not fly by night, because there were these labels that wanted to sign. There was one called Circuit, which you'd have to look up.
But you like released that early stuff
Ourselves
in a climate that wasn't particularly maybe ready to celebrate it. But then at some point you woke up and you had all these peers that were rising up, making similarly like brainy, weird shit
King
too.
Kong, band King Kong. There was just singles, and then there was like fanzine acceptance of the band. There was still fanzine culture. Seemed, obviously with computers, there's not as much fanzine. There's internet fanzine, but it's somehow, I don't know. It doesn't feel this. It might feel the same to a 20-year-old as it did to us, but there was more negative reviews for one thing.
That's true.
And there was more, just meanness, pettiness, and sometimes calling things out for what they were. But
were you ever like attacked?
Not so much. I mean, we had a pretty good go of it. According to Matador, the 90s are like in now. And the kids want to know about the 90s.
That's
so I can't believe that's true really any more than...
well, I think they want little kids to be making it, though, the 90s music.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah.
They have like this guy, Car Seat Headrest, and he's into the 90s, and Kurt.
It's like the kids are like getting encouraged to make either the same mistakes that everybody already made or like way worse mistakes that we had already learned from, like there's some real dumb cock rocking elements and just idiotic lowbrow things because everything's a melange. Now you can just pick, I'll take a little bit of, Karma Chameleon. Yeah. I love that harmonica sound. It's like such a bizarre thing to do. But some kid out there now is just like, oh, it's completely legitimate.
Yeah, right.
That would have been a battle line crossed back then.
Yeah.
Your hair, do you think it's gonna make him change? I'm just a boy with a new haircut, and that's a pretty nice haircut.
Hi, I'm Elia Einhorn, and you've been listening to Emil Amos and Stephen Malkmus on the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Subscribe on Stitcher or iTunes for upcoming episodes like Craig Finn of The Hold Steady with Sid Butler of French Kiss Records, La Savi Fav, and Late Night with Seth Meyers' 8G Band. Today's episode was recorded by Emil Amos and mixed by Mark Yoshizumi. Till next time.
Music scene is crazy, bands start up each and every day. I saw another